This is the CineSnob Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 324 of the CineSnob Podcast. My name is Cody Villafana. I am joined here today by Kiko Martinez and Jocelyn Durand for another week. To Kiko, happy fiesta. To Jocelyn, you don't get to partake because you're not here anymore. So
I know. I'm
Don't
living
they have
vicariously through all the Instagram stories.
They don't have like a something fiesta like in Atlanta?
I mean, I don't think anywhere does fiesta like San Antonio, you know?
And you did it when you were here?
I mean, yeah.
Really? Okay,
Yes.
that's interesting.
Had all the medals. I was a big fiesta fan.
Yeah, I
Especially
got
when
my-
I moved back. I was like, I miss this. Once I could drink, that was way more fun.
Oh, right. Oh, that's, yeah. I think I got my fiesta bug out of me in my 20s, so, yeah.
yeah. So we're in full swing here. I don't really think I walked by a lot of the stuff today going to a football game. So, you know, saw some of the festivities and stuff. But
It was like a
that's
quote-unquote football game, wasn't it? Like,
yeah. I mean, it was technically football. Was it good football? No, but it was. That was the sport being played. There's no question about that. But yeah, and so that's about as close as I'm going to get to it. So, watching from afar. But aside from that, we had there was an interesting news story that broke the day after we recorded our last episode that we kind of wanted to quickly talk about, which was there's been a lot of different updates for the Oscars moving forward. You know, part of what we did talk about was like the stunt category, the casting categories, you know, those upcoming ones. But they also announced that there was going to be a change for Oscar voting, which was that in order to cast a ballot in the final round of the Oscars, Academy members will have to watch every movie nominated in every category that they vote for. Now, I think a lot of people had the same reaction when they read this, which was that was not already the rule. But no, it was not. And you know, they have this like intricate thing that was reported where like if you go see a movie, you have to log it. Basically, if you go see it at like an Academy screening or use a screening platform, you have to log it and send it to the Academy, and that's how they're going to track it. Because other than that, I think it's really probably hard to do. But yeah, I mean, I think that this is an interesting you know, rule, and part of I think the interesting thing about it is, you know, every year they do that sort of anonymous ballot type stuff, articles on different websites where, you know, entertainment journalists will talk to people anonymously about who they're voting for. And some of the things that popped up a lot this past year were people talking about The Brutalist and like openly saying like I didn't finish it and saying like it was too long, I didn't watch it all. And
that's unfortunate because the second half kills the momentum of the first. So
yeah. I mean,
like,
it may have been better for The Brutalist if that were the case.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
But that kind of thing not going to happen anymore. I mean, I think it's a good thing, obviously. I mean, I feel like everyone should be voting, period, if you get a vote. Like, I don't know why you wouldn't. But I think the other thing about it that's going to be interesting, too, is, you know, someone pointed out, I can't remember who, I read this somewhere, but you know, there's like some weird stuff that happens a lot of times with like documentary film and stuff like that. And does some of that get, you know, squared away? Or no, it was animated film also too. That, you know, those are two categories where, you know, people may just like vote for the Pixar movie or whatever, and then that's it. And now if they watch, you know, some of the other movies in the category in order to vote, will you see some like interesting, like more heady stuff, you know, go through on the animated movies, or you know, not having just the best picture aligned international film. I mean, I think there's some interesting things that could happen. But yeah, Kiko, what were your initial reactions to that story?
Yeah, just real quick. I thought animators were the only ones that voted on like animated film and kind of they follow the same. Isn't that how it works?
I think that's just for nominations. Yeah,
I'd have to look it up. I could have sworn that it was, you know, actors vote for actors, you know, cinematographers vote for cinematographers, but I could be wrong. Well, the first thing was like, how are they going to keep track of this, right? And then when they explained that, it still sounded convoluted. I wouldn't want to be the person that has to get the Excel spreadsheet and follow 1,500 people and what they're watching. I think it's going to be a big mess. I also think that the voting participation is going to go way down if they're having to do this, which I'd rather have a strong 700 Academy than a really weak 2001 or whatever the number is. So that's where my that's where my feelings are. Like you said, why isn't this already a thing? It's because people are busy and they're actors and they have shit to do, and some of them are on set 8 or 9 months out of the year. So I could see why a lot of especially like really big actors and directors aren't watching everything. But that's the way it's supposed to be. I know if I had a vote in something as prestigious as that, I would take it very seriously and watch everything. But that's just me, and I'm a big nerd about that kind of stuff. And I don't think other people see it that way. And so I think that it's really gonna hurt the Academy in terms of the numbers, but it's gonna help them in terms of actually finding the best stuff that they actually think is the best stuff, instead of just following suit and maybe they hear something or they assume something, or so I think that it's going to be interesting to see what pops up out of this, because of the fact that they're actually making people watch the movies now. But it's going to be a messy process, I think.
Yeah. And before we get to Jocelyn, just quickly, and Jocelyn knows that I really hate pointing out when I'm right. It just I don't love it, but yes, I was right. The members of the branches vote for nominations, and then all Academy members can vote in the final round in all categories. But
I just think it's funny, Kiko, that you're like, I'm a big nerd about all that, and it's like, well, I feel like the Academy should be as nerdy as you are, as far as like, you know what I mean, for upholding the prestige of this award. So it's I definitely think that should be. You should be the golden rule. Someone
right.
Like you.
Give me a nomination.
10 Kikos instead of 20, people who aren't watching them. But I had two things I wanted to say about that. The first one was I sort of attribute it almost like this with this podcast, where I always say, like, I'm so glad I'm doing this podcast again, or now, because it has made me watch movies that I maybe had written off or assumed was going to be a certain way, and then actually really enjoyed. And I feel like a lot of the Academy members will probably have the same experience, as far as like, instead of just going with the one that everyone's getting the buzz about, they may be surprised by a performance. Ray Fiennes in Conclave. Like, I'm always going to go back to that because that one killed me. So that's my first thought. And then the second one is that I sent Cody a tweet about it, where someone said it only took like 87 years and Emilia Perez getting nominated. But I don't really necessarily understand how that could have played a role in this, where I guess they're saying that because no one had watched it, they were just going off of the buzz of it. But I think if you did watch it, you would. I mean, we can go back to that episode, but it really
I'd rather
was.
not.
I know. It was something. It really was something. Whether it was,
Emilia Perez was a movie in the way that the football game I watched today was football.
Well, we know how you feel. Again, Cody, we can go back to that episode. I just think that that's a funny movie to use as an example. I may go back to like Crash or something like that. I don't know how that one won. That one really disappointed me way back then.
Yeah. I think buzz is good and bad, right? You can hear the buzz and like, oh well, maybe I don't have to watch it. Let's just go with what everybody else is talking about. Or it could be bad buzz, and then it's like people are writing stuff off at the same time. So
for sure.
I'm sure it happens too in other critic associations. I mean, but the good thing is, in the critic associations that I'm a part of, every time I have to vote, there's usually, if I'm not mistaken, you can abstain from voting for specific categories, which I'll click on if I haven't seen enough, whatever it is.
Or there is a requirement to have seen a certain amount to vote in that category.
Right.
So even if you're not watching all of them, you're watching at least the majority or something like that.
Right. But it's all
a lot of bodies do it.
But it's all on the honor system, of course. So this is a little bit different, right?
I mean, this is on the honor system too. I mean, you could sit here and lie about watching a movie in the screen in like this at a screening or whatever. So I don't think you have to show them like your ticket stubs or like a selfie of you watching it with the screener in the background. Like, it's still gonna be, they're relying on the honor system. You just have to like report it.
Well, you have to. Yeah, there's gonna be a little bit more legwork, and I don't know.
Yeah.
who's going to be into doing that.
I mean, if you want to vote, you have to. I mean, like that's the thing. It's like it's a requirement. So, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think this takes effect immediately. I don't think that this is something that's being delayed, like the stunt Oscar. So it'll be super interesting to see if we see any kind of trends, or especially leading up into the Oscars, if there's any kind of pushback, or some of those anonymous ballots are like, this is bullshit. I have to watch everything.
Watch the
I don't.
movie.
Yeah. So or if people openly admit like, oh, I just had it on in the background or whatever.
Oh, there you go. Now I want every documentary next year to be all the length of the OJ Made in America documentary. So everybody has to see 8 hour long documentaries.
Now, look, if you're the documentary branch and you want to piss everyone off, you just nominate 5 really long docs and make everyone sit through it. So you could do that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Or make a movie about a trans woman singing at the top of her lungs for everybody to watch.
French director.
I can't wait for Emilia Pettis too.
Culture.
Emilia Pettis Dos.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, if that happens, we'll bring in a guest host for that week.
What would the tagline? It would be Emilia Pettis to back at it again. I don't know. Like, Fiesta, San Antonio.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oyster Bake. Oh
There
my
you go.
God, I would watch the crap out of that.
I don't even
With
like
Hoobastank
joking
as
about
the-
With
this.
Sugar Ray in the background.
All right.
That's
Well,
too silly.
anyone have anything productive to say about this?
We just gave you gems here.
I mean,
gems.
It's like,
Yeah.
That's,
I think we're good.
All right. Well, then I'm going to go ahead and move us on to reviews.
Here are this week's reviews.
So first up this week, we have The Accountant 2. So this is a sequel to The Accountant, which was shares the same director of Gavin O'Connor. I guess most well known for Warrior, right? That was probably his big movie. And he actually directed Miracle too, the hockey movie. And another sort of movie that he's done with Ben Affleck. So his last 3 movies, The Accountant, then The Way Back, a movie I think was like pretty underrated and maybe underseen. And now the sequel here with The Accountant 2. So I think there's going to be a little bit of like, in the spirit of full disclosure going on as we talk about this movie in terms of our familiarity.
Did we watch the original?
With the source material.
I know,
Here's the thing. And this is also not our fault. This is the movie's fault. This movie is a sequel to a film that came out 9 years ago and was not particularly memorable, at least in my eyes. It was not a movie that I remember a single thing about. Actually,
what
I take
year
that back.
was 9 years ago? Is this like
16?
2016. Yeah,
Wow.
that's how math works.
I'd like you to do it for me. Thank you.
So it's it for me, it was not a memorable movie. The one detail that I remembered of it is that like Ben Affleck's character was like somewhere on like the autism spectrum, and he was an accountant, and that's about the extent to which I remembered that first movie. I know a lot of people did like it. It was a movie that had kind of like I don't even want to call it necessarily a cult following, but it wasn't particularly well reviewed. It was at 53% on Rotten Tomatoes, but it had Ben Affleck, Anna Kendrick, J.K. Simmons, and John Bernthal was in it. Again, I do not remember that.
Wait. Let's stop you here. Why do you keep on saying you don't remember it? Didn't you revisit it to see The Accountant 2?
No, I did not.
You love Anna Kendrick. I'm
and that I
surprised.
do, and that was the spirit of full disclosure, right? Which is like I did not go back and watch The Accountant, a movie I didn't care for that came out 9 years ago, in order to familiarize myself.
Can't believe you.
With this. Kiko, did you?
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I hate when movies expect us to do homework. No, I didn't.
And Jocelyn, have you seen The Accountant?
Listen, this isn't like, let's call everyone out on
Not-
whether
no,
or
that's
not
exactly
they
what this
saw
is.
the
No, not seeing the
original
account,
of
not
this
seeing the
movie.
accountant at all is the exact same thing as seeing the accountant 9 years ago.
Yes, that's it's exactly what I'm saying. We're all coming into this with the same exact sort of like, well, we're jumping into this having very limited context. Like again, like Kiko is right, Jocelyn. You haven't seen that movie, and I probably remember about as much as you know about that first movie. And in fact, maybe a little bit more because you probably read the Wikipedia, or did you not read the Wikipedia?
No, I went in just straight.
Okay.
No background.
So anyway,
On purpose.
But you've done your taxes before, at least. You've met an accountant.
Yes.
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 Okay.
yes. So the reason I point this out is because again, like I think
Kiko, how could you say that?
Oh, I'm calling you out again. You're behind
Dang
in
it,
your
now
taxes.
I'm gonna get audited. Fuck.
it's your first year hearing about this, right? Again, the reason I point this out is because I think it is like problematic thing number one is this is not, and I guess it's again maybe it's me or us or whatever. I don't know who was like clamoring for this movie to exist, and so it has kind of like a similar cast of characters where you've got Ben Affleck's character who is the aforementioned accountant, where he is he's basically I believe the idea was that he was like money laundering for criminals, and that was like his thing in the accountant. And in this one, he is he's back and he's accountant again, where he's
Still
where he's
Not even a senior accountant. He didn't even get a very bump in pay or anything.
yeah.
And it's the title was squared. It was like the accountant squared.
Yes.
That was so maybe we're saying it wrong. Maybe it should be the accountant squared.
I'm gonna go with
That's
two. So in the film, his character, basically the setup of the movie is that J.K. Simmons' character, finds a woman in that he's been searching for in the very beginning of the movie. And again, spoiler alert: this happens in the first 5 minutes. J.K. Simmons' character gets shot and killed, and writes on his arm, "Find the accountant," and that is found by someone who works for the Department of Treasury, as you come to find out, and she finds his character, and it basically uncovers just another criminal web where he decides he wants to go a layer deeper to try to clean things up as part of it. He ends up getting his brother involved, who is also in some shady stuff. They're kind of estranged, and that's basically the movie. It eventually kind of morphs into a little bit of like a buddy movie between him and his brother. And I hope that what I'm about to say makes sense in terms of my description of it. So this movie feels like a movie adaptation of like the 7th book of a tired crime series with this like quirky character that's been well established, where you're just kind of dropped into this movie, and even though it's been 9 years, you're supposed to know all of these like quirks about this character and his relationships and his family. And the story is like as boilerplate as it gets. It's really not interesting or intriguing. And it's like, oh, in this book, he reunites with his estranged brother, and it's like a mystery of the day kind of thing. And that's what it felt like to me. Like those, I don't even have a reference point because I'm not a reader, but those,
Well, I mean, like Philip Marlowe or someone, but that's like the good example.
Yeah, or like
So
a
you're
Jack
talking about,
Reacher or
like,
something
those-
like that, right? There's like those Reacher books or whatever, and then each one is like this new adventure, and that's what this movie felt like to me. It felt like this is just kind of like a tired thing where we've got this quirky guy where the one thing about him is that he's on the autism spectrum, and like, oh, let's see him try to date in this one or whatever, and it's like it just does not feel fresh or new or interesting to me. As far as like the elements of the movie that do work, I think really the only thing that like borderline works is some of John Bernthal's performance and presence. I don't think that he's given much good work in terms of the script. I think the screenplay is pretty weak here, but I do think that he is. He's always a really magnetic screen presence, I think, and I do like, when him and Affleck are playing off of each other, or having this sort of like, they're very different people, they're very different brothers, and to see them compared, and him like wanting to get close to his brother, but his brother not exactly knowing how, and stuff like that. That is the one element of the movie that I think kind of sort of works okay. I don't think Ben Affleck is terrible in this. I mean, I think he's doing sort of like does it feel like a Rain Man variation or something like that, where it's a very sort of like his approach is like monotonous and stilted, and
I mean, Dustin Hoffman, like, wasn't he nominated for his
he
performance?
won, yeah.
So
He
we
won.
can't compare the two. I mean,
well, you can talk about that later. I don't think
Yes.
the performance is all that bad. I don't think that it's great, but I think that he appropriately captures what the essence of this character, I think, is supposed to be, in a way that feels authentic and believable. Aside from that, like I said, it is like a really boilerplate story. I think that it actually feels at times a little too convoluted, where I think at times it's hard to track and hard to follow exactly what's going on, especially as it pertains to Danielle Pineda's character, who is kind of like a giant mystery the entire movie, and I think kind of ends a mystery too, a little bit, and so I think that there's again, that brother element that works okay. The final act of the movie is sort of like a shoot 'em up action kind of thing, and again, just like, for me, just really generic action movie stuff that nothing really stands out, nothing's really creative about it. I just don't know why we have two movies and possibly a third movie coming about this character who is just frankly not all that interesting. And I don't think that there's a lot of interesting things about him, about his relationships. You do get like the quirkiness of like seeing the representation of, being on the autism spectrum, but it's one note. And I think that's the problem with it, is that like it's one note, it's the single thing over and over again. Him making some kind of like comment about something, and everyone pointing it out at him, or again him hacking a dating app or whatever to mess with the algorithm, and then still being bad at it and stuff. Whatever. It's just just like very generic stuff. But I'll pass to Kiko. What were your thoughts on The Accountant 2?
Yeah, I'm really hoping that the sequel wraps up. I really hope that we have the podcast 9 years from now, when we have to review the part 3. That's going to be interesting. Before I get into the my thoughts on it, I looked up some of the sequels that have the most time between them. Can anybody want to make a guess where the biggest gap is?
Anybody? I was going to think of the Linklater.
I would say like
Boyhood. Oh wait, that's
no.
not,
We're talking about
mind.
that's a
Never
sequel.
mind.
Yeah.
Sequels.
Like Dumb and Dumber had a really long one.
Yeah, that was about 20 years. The biggest one is Bambi 2, which was 64 years. Mary Poppins Returns, over 50 years. Godfather 3, Coming to America 2. I bring this up because I want you to guess the similarities between all these movies is that all the original movies are arguably classics, right? Which is why this pisses me off so much. Like people remember these movies. So just, The Accountant 2 coming into the sequel and pretending like they have enough of this fan base to say it can be like the standalone movie, I think is a big disservice to moviegoers who actually care what's happening in the film. So, when you go into this, like right away, J.K. Simmons, you already talked about him. I have no idea who J.K. Simmons is in the first movie, so I have no idea why this death of him that happens in the first 5 minutes is a big deal, right? So that's a really bad kickoff for anybody who doesn't remember it. This new story, nothing's explained. I mean, we don't even get the news or the anything that lets us know that Ben Affleck, unless you saw the trailer, not even then, that he is on the autism spectrum. So if you go in there blindly, you're going to be like, I have no idea what's going on. The only other the big thing I have to say about this film, and we talked about it a few weeks ago, and it's how much I dislike the plot device of the all-knowing computer nerd. This came up in the amateur with Rami Malek, and this one's even more upsetting because this is a room full of kids at this special school. It's almost like
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
X-Men wannabe
That was so.
kids that they can basically do anything they want with the stroke of a few
army,
keys.
the child
so
hacker army.
yeah, I thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was cliche across the board.
Again, these are all characters from The Accountant. You guys just had to do your homework.
What were the kids in the first one?
I don't. The
Remember.
Wikipedia page does not say.
And they're in a school. It's like a school of, like you said, X-Men. It's so bizarre.
Yeah. So I mean, plus the main story revolves around this very convoluted story about embezzlement that just goes all over the place. I at points I was just like I didn't know where I was going until the very end where it all just comes to a big screeching, pull out your M16 magazine or whatever you want to call it, guns, and just blow them up. And of course there is some kind of there's a little bit of a disturbing scenario at the end with these kids that they're trying to save, but overall it was just very cliche to me, just in general. So again, this movie was released 9 years ago, so it'd be different if we were talking 2 or 3 years. That would be my breaking point, I think, for something as unmemorable as the original. So, or if we're talking about something like Saw Part 8, you can go in and watch Saw Part 8 without remembering Saw Part 4, right? It's a big difference. So I just think that the Accountant 2 was almost like it just felt like it was more important than it actually is. So that's where I was. That's where I landed on it. It was kind of a big disappointment in terms of not only not remembering the original, but jumping on board for this one and not really feeling any connection to anything. So
Yeah. Okay, Jocelyn.
Well, now I want to know who dies in Bambi 2. I need to see that now. I didn't know there was a sequel to Bambi.
the mother rises from the dead.
I'm
She's
like,
a
what
zombie
happens in
deer.
Bambi 2? What could be more traumatic than
Right.
Bambi 1? Like that they had to come back and revisit it. Yes, I completely agree with everything that you guys were talking about. And it's funny because actually Cody and I, we thought we disagreed, but we actually agree on this more than I anticipated. I think the one thing I disagree with him on is that Ben Affleck did it successfully. I just think that there was like a way he was speaking that was very put on and like very, you could just really, it bothered me. You could just tell he was acting, and it wasn't a very natural performance, which is, I guess, hard to determine since he's such an awkward character, and the personality is so awkward, but just something he was doing just really kind of took me out of it, and it was just Affleck, doing something. And
An affectation.
Yes, it was an affectation. Thank you, Cody. Yay, that's exactly the best way to put it. And it's really sad because Ben Affleck is so charming, so it's so bizarre for me that they would give him a character where like all of the charm is sort of removed from him. But I will go into the John Bernthal character, and that was really when the movie was at its best. Like, I think he like breathed life into this movie, and their dynamic was really entertaining. I think that's like the one thing that this movie has going for it, because other than that, I don't know if you guys, I guessed every like quote unquote funny thing that like had the audience I was with laughing. I was like, I saw that, I could see that coming like a mile away, every single thing. So then when it was like the payoff was like, oh, it's a joke, I was like, I hate this movie. It really bothers me when I'm not even trying to figure it out, and it's very simple to see. So I guess that's just the script was just terrible. So then I guess for the performance specifically, I'm going to say that I really did think that it was a little borderline offensive. Just to assume, like you guys were saying, that because he's autistic or he's on the spectrum that he has like a magic catch-all brain, but then also to make him like also sort of like superhuman, because it wasn't just mentally, it was like physically he was like a badass at everything, and it's so almost dismissive of his diagnosis, whatever it was. Even if it's a complimentary, it's just sort of reducing him to no nuance as far as like, so it just really makes it completely ridiculous. And like I said, I just think it's actually a little offensive.
I
Yeah.
do think that that's where having seen the first movie would maybe soften that a little bit, where
Sure.
like he is that way in the first movie. Like he's very competent and in all of those ways where
I
it's
know,
been
but
like
do they
established.
explain? Okay, so they explain that he's also just like trained in martial arts and fighting and hand-to-hand combat and
I
all of
believe
that. Okay,
I believe so.
okay,
Yeah.
that would help because it's just
Yeah, so-
he's just a badass at everything. And
so
like Kiko
reading-
was saying, it's like, oh, he's got a computer mind. It's like every problem is he knows the answer to. Every situation he can fight his way out of, and it's like it's just like godlike. It's
He can get all the green
ridiculous.
lights to turn on exactly when you need them.
Well,
Well, that was
again,
because of the child hackers.
Oh, that's
Kiko.
right, the
That
child
was
hackers.
the army of child hackers. So
again if you read
who he
the-
probably taught though. So
Yeah.
the plot of the first movie, him and his brother were trained by the father in various martial arts.
that makes sense. Yes, and that's
yeah.
why the brother comes
So-
in and he's just as equipped, I guess
Yes.
you can say, but
Yeah.
without the sort of that sort of explains it slightly. But I'm not going to say that it justifies it at all because that's just a ridiculous premise for them to be like, well, they're just like better than everyone at everything, and that's what this movie is about. So I had assumed that I didn't see this movie just because it's like one of those actiony movies that came and went, and I just missed.
It did. It was.
But my theater was like full of people like laughing
Really?
their heads off.
I-
I
I-
understood that it had a cult following after I saw it. After I saw the people's reactions, I was like, oh, there's people here who are like really excited to see this sequel. I just had no idea it was 9 years ago.
Yeah, I don't.
But-
I don't. Where is this hidden? Where's this hidden group of
Hidden group of
accountant
people?
stands?
I
don't get
know.
it.
They're not
Because my
people
buddy
that
said the same thing. He's like,
I-
"Oh, I love the original. That's why I'm going to go see
I'm
it."
telling you.
I'm like, "Who are?" Anyway, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it made $155 million worldwide. Only cost 44 the original.
I
So
just always assume it's the same people that are like selling out the Marvel movies. It's just like people that I am not, I'm not talking movies with, but
So you didn't turn to the person next to you in the theater and ask, "Do you remember the first one?"
I should have just struck up.
I kind of wanted to do that. Like,
That's
who's
okay.
here? Can I get a show of hands of who remembers the first
Oh
one?
my God, Kiko, you're so funny. You're gonna be like the homecoming king of the Accountant 2 screening. But yeah,
Alright.
so I guess that's what everything I wanted to say. It's
Yeah.
just ridiculous, and I figured every little like clever idea out before it happened, and it wasn't clever.
Yeah, because you're clever yourself. My favorite
It wasn't
scene was
hard, though.
Barenthal's scene, and that's the one with the girl that's crying. I really like that scene, the way that it kind of worked itself out, because that was kind of a mystery. It's like, okay, she's there, what's going
So
on?
I totally, that's an example of a scene where I was like, I completely know exactly, because they tried to, have you not asking questions, but it's impossible not to ask questions because it's just like all of a sudden he's with this woman out of
Right.
nowhere. So that's just one example where I was just like, okay, I know exactly what happened,
Oh, really? Okay, that's cool.
Oh yeah. I don't know,
I
but
didn't-
she's
I
like
didn't-
she's like crying, so it's like clearly she's in distress, But anyway. Another one was the trunk scene. The trunk thing where she's like stealing the car and the person's still in the car. It's like,
Oh.
okay, yeah, well, they didn't show him taking him out, so it's like very clear that he was going to be still in there. Anyway, sorry. Cody's so bored.
no, I am I'm ready to summarize and
Yes.
give grades because I don't know there's a lot more to say on this one. Yeah, just a movie that I feel isn't really necessary. I don't really think that it adds anything to the action genre or the buddy genre in the same way that, again, I don't know who exactly was clamoring for this type of movie. It is generic, so much so that, like, and part of my comparison I made earlier is that it feels like, again, like a novel come to life and not really that's not a compliment when I say that. It just because it feels like, there's 1,000 of these that are out there that are disposable and, are indistinguishable from one another. It just has a hook of having this character with this, thing going on with him with his autism spectrum disorder. So for me, I'm giving it a C. Kiko, your final thoughts and score.
Yeah, I just thought it was this embezzlement thriller, and I took points away for it expecting viewers to remember the original movie. I didn't think there was an ounce of originality besides the idea of someone like Dustin Hoffman from Rain Man moonlighting as somebody like Jason Bourne. So I'm giving this a very average C as well.
Yeah, I just think the entire thing is ridiculous. I think that they really took away everything that makes me like a Ben Affleck performance, all of the sort of like heart and warmth and charm that he usually has, and I'm doing a C-.
All right, so we will go ahead and then move on to our next film, The Legend of Ochi. So The Legend of Ochi is a film from A24, kind of one of their very few like sort of family movies. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On was the only other one that we could really come up with for sure that was part of that. But the film is basically kind of like an adventure fantasy kind of film about a farm girl who basically is lives with Willem Dafoe's character and then there's a bunch of like boys there as well who are basically training to hunt down this creature known as the Ochi, and they're told to not go outside, to fear them, all that stuff. And along the way, this character named Yuri finds a injured baby Ochi and decides that she's going to try to return this creature to its family and kind of runs away. And so she goes on this adventure while Willem Dafoe and everyone with him, the boys with him, go searching for her. So yeah, this is a film where it has, I think the first thing that I wanted to talk about was the thing that I think works the most about it, which is the visual style, and specifically the look of the Ochi, I guess, character, because it is a puppet, and it's a puppet that if you read about it, was operated by 7 people, and it's like a little baby puppet. And I think that they do a really nice job of making it come to life and having it be what feels like a fully fledged character. And the design of it is really cool looking. And I think that is kind of like the best part about it. Now, the problem, I think, is that this said puppet disappears for like 20 minutes in the middle of the movie. And you get kind of wrapped up in this sort of like family drama that I think kind of screeches the movie to a halt a little bit. And I think the movie could have used a lot more sort of like interactions with the puppet. My biggest problem here is this movie feels like an intersection of like Spielbergian kind of like E.T. with like maybe a little bit of like, I don't know, like Gremlins or something like that, kind of like that 80s adventure. And then it feels like it's an intersection between that and like, and I know this is a tired, reference point, but it is accurate, I think, with like a Wes Anderson or something that has like an indie sensibility to it. But I think that it loses anything that makes either of those things great. The movie is not like adventurous and fun and enjoyable and funny enough to feel like an 80s throwback or to feel like an E.T. or, one of those movies where the adventure part feels kind of stifled in bits. Like there are long bits of this movie that are extremely slow, and I think it's like more meditative, and I feel like it doesn't really I would not call this movie fun at any point, and I feel like that's what makes kind of this type of movie enjoyable. That sort of like a kid is hiding this creature from everyone else and trying to protect it and stuff like that. There's usually like some fun going on there, and I don't think this has a lot of it. And then on the indie side of things, I don't think it ever really commits to being like offbeat. There are moments of it. Specifically, there's a scene that happens where they go into like a grocery store, and like the color palette changes, and that's where it feels like a Wes Anderson kind of thing. There's a Wes Anderson feel of like Willem Dafoe like training up these children soldiers kind of thing that again feels very like along like a Moonrise Kingdom or something like that. But it just like dips in and then dips out. And I wanted it to commit to one of those things in a way that made this movie feel memorable. But for me, it's this tweener where it's like, it's not enjoyable enough to be an adventure. It's not like quirky or weird enough to feel like an indie spin on something. I think that the family stuff gets really kind of boring. And I also think that the interactions between the girl and the Ochi get boring as well, where their interactions are like through language and stuff like that. Just, I don't know. I feel like it just felt too, it felt like it was trying too hard in a lot of different ways to be, again, like this indie spin on something familiar. And I think it kind of like took its personality out of it a little bit. So it feels a little bit like it doesn't have a ton of like sort of like draw or likability to it. So I'll go ahead and pass on to Jocelyn.
Well, I will say it looks beautiful, and the puppet is adorable, and I love that they used a puppet. I think.
Did you take your kids?
No, I did not. I think they would have been scared. I think they're still too young for something like this because of the peril. As I messaged Cody that there is some peril involved, and then Willem Dafoe like said peril, and I was like, oh my god. I was literally just messaging Cody that. But so it's beautiful, and the puppet's adorable, and like I said, I think it's such a cool throwback for them to use an actual puppet instead of like some CGI crap. And I know that the director is a music video director, and it felt like a music video in a lot of ways. And I think similarly to what Cody was saying, it doesn't kind of meld together. But I did actually like the family stuff. I was happy to see Emily Watson. She's like incredible. So when she kind of hopped in, I was really happy to see her. I haven't seen her in a movie in a while. So that was something that I really liked. And also the performances. I think Willem Dafoe is such a fun villain that it's just like, it makes it a little fun, but I will agree that I don't think it has enough to be, like you said, like one of those like 80s throwbacks. Like, I don't know, one of those like, oh, gosh, I'm thinking of like The Bear or something, like even Homeward Bound, like, you know, lost in the woods and trying to find your home kind of a thing. It doesn't quite get there.
Yeah. Kiko, your thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't know that the Ochi was a puppet, so I'm not sure if not knowing that is a good thing or a bad thing, because I just thought it was a CGI character. So is that good? I mean, that it looks so good as a puppet that I thought it was CGI. I don't know. Where are these 7 people? Did they just like green screen them out?
Probably, yeah.
I don't know.
Or they're hiding behind a rock or something.
Yeah, they're
All
hiding
7
behind
of
the Mama Ochi. Okay, were the big Ochis puppets too?
I
don't
know.
so.
Okay. Well, I that's a surprise to me. I didn't know. I thought it was just.
It also has a very handmade, like it's got like matte paintings in it.
Right.
It
yeah.
looks like a Furby. Now that I think about it,
You're
that's
right.
exactly
It
what
does
it
look
was
like a Furby.
reminding me of, like the eyes, how they like open and the little beak mouth almost.
Right. So this movie was rated PG, of course. And so as soon as I found that out, and I realized that it was a little bit scarier for a family film, I was hoping that they were going to go more like Where the Wild Things Are, which
Yeah.
was my favorite film of 2009. I just loved that look and that feel and the message, even though it was a bit of a slower movie for kids. But it didn't even get near that. I'll give Ochi some credit when it comes to the creativity behind the setting and the atmosphere of the film. I love the old village look and some of the more detailed production design. And I thought the composer, I forgot to look up his name, but he was the lead vocalist of a band called the Dirty Projectors. I don't even know. I've never heard of them before. But I thought the music was great too. It was really weird and offbeat. But beyond the physical world building that caught my attention, that the mythical aspect of the Ochi itself just fell short for me. I didn't think he was a memorable character, this Ochi or the Ochis, the plural form of Ochi, of course.
Is that true though?
Ochi.
What's that?
Are we sure that the plural of Ochi isn't Ochi?
Oh, I'm just yeah, I have no idea.
I mean, they talk about the Ochi in general,
You're
right?
You're
So,
right. That's probably just Ochi. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. So yeah, I just didn't think that it was an interesting character overall. Just I thought it was more Mac and Me than E.T. in my opinion. So again, the look and feel, I loved it. The music I loved, but the little girl and the Ochi character coming together and creating this bond, I didn't feel it at all. It did, run a little bit too slow. I did take my son, who's 8.5, and he was devastatingly bored. It was him and I in the movie theater at 11 a.m. this morning. Only two people in the theater, and
I was the only one when I went.
30 minutes in, he's like, "Since nobody's in the theater, can I go try all the seats out?" That's how. I was like, "Don't you want to watch the movie?" He's like, "Oh," and then the singing part. There was like this secondary storyline where the Ochi could kind of like sing and connect with people. Yeah, every time they sang, he just turned around and he's like, "This is so annoying when they sing." I'm just like, okay. Yeah.
Well, and by the way, like that's that 20-minute period I was talking about where they spend time like explaining all of that.
Well,
the Ochi is nowhere to be found.
Yeah, true. It's a cool little idea. I get it. Like they're trying to tie in music with the language, and I like the fact that she can speak to the Ochi at one point.
Well, and I think it was about family, like that.
Yeah, I know.
It brought them together.
But so was Lilo and Stitch, right?
True.
Yeah. So I just think that it's been done a million times before, where this creature gets lost.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we have Lilo and Stitch. Pete's Dragon did it as well. E.T. of course. The Okja. I don't know if that was A24, but the Okja was
I think
another one.
Okja was Neon.
Oh, Neon. Okay. Sometimes I get them confused, but yeah.
Or no, Okja was Netflix. Sorry.
Oh, that's right. I used to have a stuffed Okja. I lost it between moves.
Yeah.
Really makes me sad. Anyway, yeah. That's where I landed on the Legend of Ochi, unfortunately.
All right. So then let's get to final thoughts. So again, for me, I just wish that it would have moved in any direction that it was kind of flirting with. I think Kiko, Where the Wild Things Are was something else I was thinking of too, right? Which is like, is it going to be this kid's movie that has like this deeper message, that has like a indie sensibility, that has like a lot of like great artistry to it, and it's ultimately a movie that feels like it doesn't have a hook, really. Again, I don't think that the sort of like style of it in terms of not visually, but just sort of like, again, like those sort of like Wes Anderson indie, quirky, whatever you want to call it, style is not fully fleshed out in the same way that the adventure elements of it aren't fleshed out too. So like if you're talking about, oh, it's an indie spin on, Gremlins or whatever, like not really, right? Because it's not all that like fun or enjoyable. So for me, I just think it's like a little bit too boring and uninteresting to really make an impact. So I'm going with the C+. Jocelyn, your final thoughts and grade.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it felt like a music video, and I think learning that the director has a background in that makes sense, because I could see how this could be a really cool, universe that he has created, maybe for a shorter period of time. I don't think it was maybe enough to be a full movie. I did find it at times heartfelt, but I think in the end there wasn't anything new. Like you guys both said, this is like every movie that we've seen, but not done as well, as far as like the little creature trying to get back home type of storyline. So I also gave it a C+.
We are on the same wavelength here, guys. I thought Ochi was it's a set in a beautiful and haunting world, but the narrative about this lost creature, again, we've seen a million times before. It just doesn't bring enough originality to the script. So that's where I ended up. I'll give credit to the production design. I'll give credit to Willem Dafoe. I'll give credit to Emma Watson, but all their connection to what I felt didn't add up too much. So I am also giving this a C+. Wow, amazing. All
right. Well, there we go. So then we'll go ahead and move on to the next film, Cheech Chong's last movie. So this is a documentary film about Cheech Chong that premiered at South by Southwest last year, excuse me. And I did not see it there, but it basically spends time talking about really their lives from growing up to their work together to an eventual falling out and so I will preface this by saying I don't have a ton of Cheech and Chong reference points. I would
smoking out all the time.
Yeah, everyone who knows me knows that that's what I'm all about. It was just before my time, right? I mean, they basically stopped doing stuff in the 80s, right? That's kind of when they broke up for the first time, and so and also based on what I saw with clips in the movie, don't really know it would be my thing anyway. But it kind of goes into a lot of things about things that I found interesting, because a lot of the stories about how they got famous is sort of like entertainment from a bygone era kind of thing, where, you know, they talk about like doing comedy bits, making an album, not of like stand up or anything, but like of recorded bits, and then like going out on the road and like performing those bits. That's a thing that just like doesn't exist anymore. And I think that learning about how they became super famous, so much so that like that led them to making a series of movies, I think is legitimately a super interesting showbiz kind of thing that doesn't really get talked about or doesn't really happen anymore. So I found that part of it really interesting. Where this movie becomes a little bit problematic, not in the terms of like the movie itself, is that it's like encyclopedic to a fault at times, where, you know, I whenever I talk about documentaries, I always talk about like, well, is it enough for you to care if you're not already a fan of whatever the subject is or interested organically? You see this happen a lot with music docs, where there's like 1,000 music documentaries that come out, and if you don't like care about the band that they're talking about, it can be really hard to become interested in the documentary. You can't just go in cold and, you know, experience it, because either you don't really have any reference point, or maybe they don't contextualize them properly, and don't let you know like why you should care about all of these people. And I feel like I'm moving the goalposts a little bit, because I do think that this movie does those things. I think it contextualizes Cheech and Chong. I think that it provides information about why you should care. I think that it can be watched and followed and enjoyed by people who don't know about them coming into it. However, it's just too long. It's over 2 hours, or just under 2 hours. No, it's 123 minutes. Yeah, it's just over 2 hours. And they really cover a lot. I mean, they really cover their childhood, and then they cover, you know, their relationships growing up. There's a good like half hour of the movie, it feels, before they even meet each other, where you're kind of like finding out about them. And then when they meet, it starts to get a little bit redundant when they start talking about certain elements of their career. There's you know, longer sections that are also padded out by this through line of a blending of what feels like moderately scripted, but maybe not entirely scripted. The sort of narrative device is that Cheech and Chong are on a road trip together, basically. And you see people throughout their lives like pop into the car with them, and they're having a conversation. Some of it is like comedic bits, and then some of it eventually leads to like some open and honest dialogue between the two of them about their career and their falling out and where they were apart. Now, I think that the device of it kind of makes it a little bit tough to know whether or not there are pieces of that are scripted too. I think it kind of blends reality and fiction a little bit in those moments. I feel like there's moments that are probably authentic that are mixed within, but who really knows? And I just feel like this movie could have shaved off a good 20 minutes or more and been a little bit leaner and more, enjoyable. Again, I think that it does a really nice job of historically placing them in their place in comedy, and I think the conversation surrounding, because I think the notes it hits are like, okay, this is a common story of partnerships, creative partnerships that almost always end poorly. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a really nice example of that. And also too, I find it interesting when there's people who still hold grudges 30, 40 years later and like are still clearly like affected by it, or like they clearly don't see eye to eye on certain things. This all happens in the last 20 minutes or 30 minutes of the movie, and I think that those are some of the most interesting moments of it. I just wish that it was a little bit shorter, and I wish it would have left a little bit out detail wise on some of the like earlier stuff and like some of the monotonous career stuff. But that being said, I do think it is pretty watchable. So I'll go over to Kiko. What were your thoughts on Cheech and Chong's last movie?
Yeah, I disagree with the 20 minutes shaving off 20 minutes of it. I actually would have wanted to add like 45 minutes to it, but I would have wanted to split it into 2 or 3 episodes. I really think that this would have worked better as a 2 or 3 part doc series on Max or whatever it's going to be put on. You talked about the ending. I think I agree with you. The last 20 minutes are the most important and most interesting parts, where Cheech and Chong are discussing their differences and they're put in the spotlight, where things get a lot more insightful. I just think it happens so late in the game that it feels like an afterthought. But if they had broken it into 2 or 3 things, I think they could have covered a lot more of those issues that they skim over. I'm glad you brought up the the fact that you couldn't really tell whether or not some of the things that they were talking about, especially when they were driving in the car, were real or not. I'm so torn on that. I have no idea what's happening in that last part where they were driving, because it really feels like they're angry at each other.
Yeah.
But they're actors, so I have no idea.
Right.
I have no idea. I would hope that they didn't fake the audience out and it was like real, coming from the heart, and there, because you could see some pain there, right? And so I really hope that dynamic between those two men was real at the end, and you could tell they had like a brother relationship, where you just sometimes hate family, and but you gotta stick together with them, and you go through the ups and downs of a familial relationship. So I just like the way that they showed how it evolved over the years and where they began and where they ended. When it comes to documentaries, I like to think about whether the film is good enough to become like the definitive documentary on that person or event it's covering. So like, could there be a chance that someone else comes back 5 years from now and rehashes the same like narrative and makes this a more compelling story? I don't know. I probably not, especially because they're part of it, right? So like, I'm thinking like Amy, the doc on Amy Winehouse, Amy. I don't think there's any way anybody's gonna make a better Amy Winehouse doc, in my opinion. Or Val. We just talked about Val a couple of weeks ago. There would be no reason for anybody to go out and make another Val doc, right? So I think the director, who has actually never made a feature doc before, which is interesting. I think he did just enough to set the subjects up well enough to tell their stories. So whether it's their individual origin stories before they teamed up together to become these stoner comedians, or whatever came after that, I think that was strong enough, especially for those fans who have like a nostalgic connection to these guys. Believe it or not, I'm a bit too young as well, Cody, to have listened to any of their comedy albums or even watched their first movie, Up in Smoke, that came out in 1978. So Baby Kiko was still a twinkle in his mother's eye.
You can see movies that were made before you were born,
That's true. That's true. But I don't think I'm with Cody on that. I don't think it was in my wheelhouse as a kid. I mean, I was Karate Kid. I was in Up in Smoke. So,
dork.
I think, but I think fans. Most fans would have wanted quote unquote last movie from these two guys to have been a feature narrative, which is why they included those driving scenes. But the driving scenes felt more like filler than anything else. So again, 2-part, 3-part series would have been a lot better. But for a one-shot feature documentary, you're right. Over 2 hours is a bit too much, and I wish they had gotten a little bit more into their differences. That was the most fascinating part of it. And I'm thinking his daughter, Chong's daughter, is a writer or producer on this. So I'm wondering if that had anything to do with it. Just to it's one of those things where you want to be truthful about the story, but you don't want to push it too much where people become villains in their own story. So that's where I'm at with.
Yeah. Well, and I think real quick, sorry, Jocelyn, but like one thing that I feel like to piggyback off of that, where it, because for a lot of it does feel that they are like not sanitizing it, like you hear a little bit about like some things that they did that were like not savory, like, or like you to hear like Tommy Chong talk about like his multiple relationships and stuff like that. And then you get to hear stuff about like Lou Adler, the guy who kind of had like signed them to their record deal, directed their movie, and it shows them, but it like hints towards those things, but doesn't spend any time on him. Like anything that's like controversial, quote unquote, like you see like Tommy Chong's first wife appear and say one line and then that's it, but she doesn't explain anything beyond that. Or,
they bring it up and they drop it, right?
Yeah, and then they show Lou Adler, they say something that he did that was kind of shitty and like doesn't give him a chance to explain himself or talk about it at all. So I feel like they like skirt it, but they don't really spend any time on it. And I think that's part of like the sanitized part about when people are involved in their own documentary, is that sometimes they can control that narrative a little bit. But Jocelyn, your thoughts on Cheech and Chong's last movie?
Yeah, it's funny you said control the narrative, because I think that's the dynamic between the two, and Chong, I think, has a really hard time of releasing that control, which I think led to a lot of their issues, which was interesting to see, because I didn't even know they had a falling out. But I am it's so funny, out of us three, my mother was notorious for showing my sister and I movies that we should not be watching when we were young. And she introduced us to Up in Smoke, and it was the most hysterical movie. I don't even know how old I was. I think I was a teenager, I wasn't like young. But it was hysterical. And I remember she presented it to us as like, these guys, you think they're morons. They're actually extremely intelligent. Like, especially, Cheech is like notorious for going on Jeopardy and killing it. And I really loved seeing this documentary show that. Like, they are intelligent people who act like morons and, made all this money doing it. And I think it's like that age-old thing where you'd have to be very smart to appear that dumb. And I really loved learning about all of their backstory. I think it did go... it's so funny because it was too long for me for a movie, but I really love that idea of like a 3-part series, like Kiko, because I feel like that whole beginning could have been one episode, the whole Up in Smoke and like movies could have been the second episode, and then the whole Falling Out would have been 3. It would have been perfect. And then they could have devoted more to each, because it is really heavy at the beginning. Like,
and ask the tough questions, right?
They didn't even meet until like I went. Cody said 30 minutes. I think that's generous. I think it was like halfway through the movie before they even met. But I really loved seeing how they talk about like race, and then I also loved seeing all of the clips of like people talking to them about race, like in the 70s. I think it was so eye-opening to see, and then it really just kind of shows like what pioneers they were, that there was this like Mexican American actor and this half Chinese Canadian guy who literally just like found a way for themselves in this like extremely difficult industry. I'm just like getting chills. I loved it so much. I really enjoyed it, and I think if it had been shorter as a movie but longer as a miniseries, it would have been perfect.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, then let's get to our final thoughts and grade. And yeah, I mean, again, I think, like I said before, it's encyclopedic to I think, perhaps a fault where, you guys are saying, like, it'd be nice to split it up into, like, add more and split it up into a miniseries, but ultimately what we get is a 2-hour documentary, right? And so, because of that, I feel like you either have to, you could have made it longer or made it shorter, but, like, that's it. But I think that it does a really nice job of contextualizing the importance of it. I do like the look that it gave into. I mean, you really do see like how long ago it was that, like, I mean, like Tommy Chong is like 86 and Cheech is like almost 80. These are older guys, and that first Cheech and Chong album was 1971. That was a long time ago. So, especially for someone so young like me, but I really appreciated that sort of like, because being a fan of comedy, it's interesting to see like how people got started, and even hearing them talk about, like they started with improv, and then through improv they built sketches out, and through sketches they, thought it would be funny to make an album. Like to hear like these comedians go like, we should make an album again, does not really happen anymore. the last, the idea of like the comedy sketch album is like, like that, like Adam Sandler, made. That was kind of like the last guy to really do it and not, like have stand up or whatever. So I think I just liked hearing about that stuff. But again, it just gets really down in the details. I feel like the comedic written bits don't really work all that well. They're doing kind of like these cutaway jokes while they're in the car, like with the gummies and with all that other stuff. And to me, just not funny, not enjoyable. I think that it does get personal, but maybe on like surface level and then maybe one layer deeper. I don't really think it gets to the bone or the core on any of this stuff. But that being said, it's an enjoyable watch. If you're a fan of Cheech and Chong, I would definitely see the movie. I think it is a great thing for fans. If you're not, I still think it's worth watching. I just think prepared for kind of like a little bit of I'm not going to call it a slog because it's not unbearable, but it is. You do feel that 2-hour length, at some point. So I'm giving it a B-. Kiko, your final thoughts and grade.
So I thought it was a nostalgic and entertaining look at the comedians' careers. That would have worked, of course, better in a 2 or 3 part doc series because of just how influential they were in the 70s and 80s. So, but overall, I just think they skimmed the surface on their conflict in order to keep the film as amicable as possible. So, I myself am a solid B.
And Jocelyn.
Yeah, I found the entire thing, even the scripted stuff in the car, I found it very charming. I loved seeing these old guys, like Cody said. I mean, these are, and they even said in the documentary, like rock and roll, like they are some of the last like living legends of like this old rock and roll era. Other than it just kind of, like Cody said, maybe not a slog, maybe just kind of dragged a little at the end. Otherwise, it would have been a great documentary. I gave it a B-.
All right. So we'll then get into our final film of the episode, On Swift Horses. On Swift Horses is a film starring Daisy Edgar Jones, Jacob Elordi, Will Poulter, and it is based off of a novel that came out in 2019. I did not get the chance to see this film, but the two of you did. So Jocelyn, why don't you tell us about On Swift Horses and let us know what you thought about it.
Oh, wow. I haven't done this in a while where I have to summarize the movie. Kiko, you help me out.
Okay, well, I can summarize if you want,
Thank
and then
you.
we'll just throw it to you. So yeah,
Yes.
So it follows a newlywed couple, Muriel, who's played by Daisy Edgar Jones, and her husband Lee, who's played by Will Poulter, and their lives are kind of interrupted when Lee's brother Julius, played by Jacob Elordi, returns from the Korean War, and so. Lee wants them all to live together in San Diego, but Julius decides to go to Las Vegas to work at a casino, where he meets a coworker named Henry, played by Diego Calva, and they begin a relationship with one another. Meanwhile, back in California, Muriel is sending her brother-in-law letters because she's super thirsty for him too. But she's also thirsty for her neighbor, Sandra, played by Sasha Kaye.
Right.
Basically, Daisy Edgar Jones is very horny in this movie. So that's going to be the way that I wrap this synopsis up.
All right,
do you want to start?
I'll watch it.
Go ahead and you go ahead and start first. You tell me what you thought, and then we'll just kind of jump back and forth and have a conversation.
I'm ready because that's interesting that's how you interpreted it, because I took it as that she wasn't sort of horny for Jacob Elordi, but that she was that they more connected on the fact that they were both homosexuals masquerading as heterosexuals, which I had seen sort of from the trailer and really made me sort of interested to see this movie, because it was sort of giving me Brokeback Mountain vibes. I was excited to see these two people who are living in this era where they cannot be their true authentic selves. And what that means, and ultimately I was super disappointed. I think it was super empty and really vapid, and I think it was sort of like pretending to be meaningful because of the subject matter. Mm-hmm. And then when the credits rolled, you realize that there was really nothing that they delved into that was sort of fascinating about the two characters and their sexual dynamics or their homosexuality. And in fact, I think that they they really kind of glossed over really anything interesting. And also, I thought that the ending really disappointed me. I thought it was sort of silly, and they sort of put all their money on this one relationship that's, to me, again, just really felt too empty, and there was no real work that they had done to make me invested in either of the characters.
Right.
So I'm all that to say, I just really, maybe it was because my expectations were too high going into this, that I mean, Brokeback Mountain is, like the pinnacle of this type of a film. And then, how are you going to achieve that? But it really, to me, it was like even worse because it was so empty.
Right. No, I totally agree. The script I thought was a mess. And I understand that, because this film is set in the 50s and because it has the same-sex storylines, it's supposed to feel like groundbreaking and a bit dangerous because of what could happen, to gay individuals during that era. But it all felt very calculated to me. I thought of Brokeback Mountain as well. But just all the relationships felt very artificial, and Muriel's sudden interest in horse racing, where, in fact, she meets another woman who she wants to bump clams with.
Right.
Yeah. So, everyone is trying to seduce one another. That's all.
Okay, yes.
Under this veil of like suppressed sexuality, right? And I totally get it. I'll go back and I'll kind of agree with you in the point. I still think she wants to sleep with Jacob Elordi's character, but I understand where you're coming from with the connection of a little bit something more in depth.
But I had forgot about the other woman, so you're absolutely right. It really was.
She wanted to sleep with everybody. She
wasn't really, discriminating against anyone.
Exactly. So yeah, I really thought it was a pointless narrative with no real development between the relationship. Whether it's the brothers, I mean, they're not even together, and we're supposed to believe like they're super close knit family. Or that they care about each other so much, or any of the lovers, just to be blunt. But I mean, none of them really connected for me as well. Most of the time, the main characters aren't even in the same place, but we're led to believe they have this like unbreakable bond with one another. So, and then just some of the other. There's so many like different things that are happening. Like there's a story of her hiding money, which was like I completely knew where this was going. Right, it just kind of like. You knew how it was going to end just because she's doing this, right? So even though she didn't explain why she was doing this, because in the movie she's hiding money all over the house that she's winning from these horse races. So, but in the back of my mind, I'm just like,
where's where the movie title comes from?
Yeah.
No, actually, it's much more literal than that.
Yeah.
The ending, like literally, one of the characters leaves on a horse, and that was so silly.
It was a swift horse too. It wasn't a slow horse. It was a very swift horse.
Sorry, I couldn't believe it when the credits rolled. I was like, "That is it. That's how they ended it."
Yeah, but it's a big mess. There's way too many things happening in every single relationship, and none of it ties together. And again, this family is. 80% of the movie is them separated, but when they get back together, it's almost like they never left. And maybe that's part of it, but I didn't buy it one bit especially at the end when her and the Daisy's character and the Elordi character finally get back together again. And it's supposed to feel like epic, right? It's supposed to be like this thing that's supposed to that's built up this whole movie, and then it just kind of like dwindles. So yeah, I was not into this movie at all.
All right, well then we'll go ahead and get into any kind of wrapped up final thoughts in your grades. Jocelyn, why don't you kick that off?
Yeah, I think it was like epic is that's the word, Kiko, that it was going for. It's like masquerading as this like really meaningful epic, and it's extremely not that. It's like the exact opposite. It's really hollow and just like empty of anything. It's really a bizarre movie to see how they accomplished that. So I'm doing a solid C.
All right.
Yeah.
Kiko.
Yeah, I thought it was she tried to deliver this dramatic narrative about like this suppressed sexuality in 1950s America, but all the relationships felt stunted and artificial. So this was definitely my least favorite film of the week, and I'm at a C-.
Okay, well that does it for this week. So next week, to look ahead, we have Thunderbolts is the big movie. So Thunderbolts is a comic book movie. Jocelyn, is Thunderbolts Marvel or DC?
Well, you already told me I guessed DC and I got it wrong.
That's right. I was seeing
That's
if you had
you're-
given
it's
yourself
right, I
a
got it
chance
wrong.
to forget about it.
Well, I did see my first Marvel movie this week, so.
Yes. Yes. And she started off with a great one, Captain America Brave New World.
Because my kids wanted to see Red Hulk, and he was in the last 10 minutes.
So we'll see if Jocelyn makes it 2 Marvel movies. Well, who knows? That'll be something to...
It has Florence Pugh, right?
Yes.
And doesn't
David
it also
Harbour.
have and David Harbour? So I mean, like some of my favorites, like
Yeah.
And it feels like a standalone, so you don't really have to do any homework on it.
right?
Well,
Yeah.
yes,
Love that.
but also
Love
all of these
that.
characters have been in other movies, so
Well, y'all can fill me in.
maybe not.
I don't know. I think we're going to write down a list of movies you need to see in the next 6 days.
Oh
Yeah.
wow!
But it'll be
okay.
a short list, like 14
you-
movies tops.
And you're gonna have to
Sure.
watch TV too, because
Oh,
these
that's
characters are also in the TV shows. So, but you'll figure it out.
I'm kind of jealous that you haven't seen Marvel movies. I kind of want that brain that
Right?
hasn't been.
It's like
yeah, it's just like
a
nice
brand
and
new
just-
snow.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Yeah.
in addition to Thunderbolts this week or next week, we have The Surfer, the new Nick Cage movie, and then we have another Simple Favor, the sequel to the Paul Feig film A Simple Favor.
Which didn't come 9 years ago. The original was not 9 years ago.
No, but it was a while. It was 2018, so it was 7 years ago. So
Dang, it was pre-pandemic.
yeah,
Wow.
it sure was. And you know how I know that? Because I saw it at the Bijou. That's where I saw that movie.
Aw, R.I.P.
Yeah. R.I.P. Bijou. I actually was in that mall today and walked by it, and it made me really sad because
I bet.
For those of you who haven't listened to the 323 podcast before this, the Bijou,
yeah.
so you don't have to do the homework. The Bijou was an independent underground.
If you're from San Antonio,
Theater
it's like the
in San
treasure, the one place
Yeah.
you could see good movies in
If-
San Antonio.
If we
For a
have
long
anyone, I mean, we talked about the closing of that place on this show, so I feel
Right.
like anyone who, and we've got tons of them fans, will probably know what we're talking about. So, but anyway, those are going to be the movies. There might be an extra one in there, but we're going to play that one by ear. But at least those 3. So, if you want to reach out to us, check us out on Facebook. Follow us on our Instagram and TikTok. Ugh, I don't like saying that. TikTok page. Also. Subscribe to us on YouTube and go to our new website, CineSnob.net, which is in its second week of being live. And if you ever want to skip a review, or you only want to listen to one review or something like that, you can find all of our reviews archived into each individual page, nice and neat. So, Kiko, do you have any kind of interview content that's going up this week?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Interviewed an actress from the TV show Ghosts. Have you ever seen Ghosts? It's on its fourth season. So if you want to check that, that's a good one. And I'll let you take a look and see what else I have. But I wanted to bring one thing up. Starting next week, and I could talk to Cody about. I wanted to start this week, but we're going to start next week. We're gonna start doing some giveaways on the podcast, so we'll let you know the best way you can to win some of these prizes. Basically, I have a ton of shit in my garage that I want to
Am
get
I
rid of.
eligible?
No.
In the last 24 years, I've amassed what I would like to consider one of the most profound collections of movie memorabilia and junk that my wife wants out of the garage sooner than later. So,
Yes.
I'm not going to give away my cool stuff, but I will give away my trash. So,
Oh.
but one man's trash.
Yeah.
Well,
Or woman's trash is another
Right.
woman.
you really truly sold it. People are going to be super excited to win.
No,
what you
I
have
am.
now
I
described as
guarantee.
trash.
I guarantee if I tell them that I have a Borat bodysuit that like cups everything.
If you have worn it, no.
Well, no, it's
Is it new?
Gently used.
Or is it gently used?
it's in the
Yes.
package still. Has not been used. No.
Yikes.
So yeah, it has not been used.
Okay,
But
good
yeah,
news.
things like that will come out of the woodwork soon.
Now, to
And,
be clear, are you sort of suggesting that someone is going to want to win that, and we will be giving it out?
oh, totally. I mean, I don't know if they'll wear it, but I think people will want to win it. I don't think you're underestimating the how much people love free shit. I know you know this though. People just love free stuff. It doesn't matter what it is. Yeah. And
Okay.
so that's where
Well,
we
be
are.
on the lookout for a Borat onesie on CineSnob and
I think
or on our
it's like
podcast.
a unitard.
Something like that.
It's more
yeah.
accurate.
Okay. Well, whatever you say.
Very nice.
All right. So, anyone have anything else to add here today?
No, we're good.
Once, twice. All right. Well, in that case, thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit cinesnob.net. See you next week.